Carolyn Doobie here. What's the play for today? Well, today I'm going to take a quote from Jack Canfield and I'm going to turn it into something to hang on the wall. Now, in this video, you're going to see the easy way to get all these letters on here without having to measure anything, without having to sweat it. And yeah, a little spoiler alert for you. I don't want to keep you in suspense. I did manage to misspell something here, and guess what? It was an easy fix. So I've got all this for you in today's video. The first thing we need to do is build the background. The background can be anything that you want it to be. I tend to go for things that are colorful. And what I did is I picked something that was kind of stalled out. This was a wood panel that I'd been working on, had some color on it. I'd stenciled my alternating diamond stencil in white, and then I really hadn't done much with it. So it was a perfect thing to build a loose, free background on. So what I'm using right now on it are some big, soft, creamy oil pastels. They're Sennelier, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. My French teacher would probably string me up at this point. Oil pastels, they can rub them around with your finger. You can move them around with a baby wipe. I'm just looking here to get some color. Now you can be precise and do a pattern. Yeah, by the way, this is my version of precise and staying within a pattern. Or you can go completely loose and willy-nilly. So you can call upon that inner preschooler, kindergartner, and just start getting color all over the place. My goal here is to just have a variety of color all over the background. Now, as a bonus, when I'm using an art supply that's oversized, like these jumbo oil pastels, it really brings out the kid in me very, very quickly. The freedom, the scribbling, the fun, it's just, well, mildly addictive for me. So once I've got a colorful background, now I'm ready to start putting the quote on there. The stencil that I'm going to use is called Hip to be Square, and when I designed this one, what I was after was something that would be an easy way to get a title or some lettering on something and have it look like it was lined up, but not having to actually do a whole lot of work to actually line anything up. Hence the squares around each letter. Now this is a masking alphabet, and what that means is when I stencil it on here, what's going to be left, whatever's in the background, that's actually going to make up the letter. So I chose a really dark color of paint here, did the purple. So you see how when I lifted that up, what's left is the shape of the letter. It's a little bit of the background peeking out. Now to get the next letter lined up, all I'm going to do is take the edge of the letter and make sure that it's touching the edge of the previous box. So that purple box that was around the letter, I'm just making sure the one for O was touching it, so it looks like I've actually worked really hard to line these things up and space them. No, not at all. It is simply put the stencil right next to it. Now each one of the squares that has a letter in it is the same size. So that way everything is going to look magically spaced no matter how many of these I put on here, because every letter fits within the same size square. So how did I know that these letters were going to magically perfectly fit the entire length of this so that I wouldn't have like a half letter hanging off the end? Well, I took a leap of faith. I absolutely decided to just not worry about it. Kind of goes with what the quote is that I'm stenciling here, and see what happened. My intention was if I got to the end and it was a half letter, then I would simply stencil half of the letter on that side and half of the letter on the next row down. Now I was really looking forward to what that split letter would look like and how that would go. And guess what? Oops, outstanding opportunity presenting suddenly. It didn't go as planned. These things actually fit along here, which I thought, yeah, there's no way that was going to happen. So, yep, I should probably go get my lotto ticket today because luck is on my side. How am I getting this row to line up so nicely with the last one? Well, this time I'm lining up the side of the box as well as the top of the box with the row before it, or ahead of it, above it, you know what I mean. And so that's keeping me on the straight and narrow, keeping my letters lined up, keeping it going straight across. But I will tell you that I'm off by just a fraction each time. There's a little bit where it's not actually mathematically exact here, which, yeah, that's not really a shocker, is it? Since I'm eyeballing where I'm putting these things, right? But what's going to happen is when I get down near the very end of this, it is going to be just a hair off. And well, you know I've got a way to fix that too, so never fear. So speaking of fixing things, sometimes I do a little bit of sloppy stenciling. I get impatient and some paint gets under the stencil. And guess what? All I need to do is kind of wipe up some of that paint. I'm using a baby wipe there. Especially if you get to it while it's fresh, you can wipe a whole lot of stuff up. Once I've got that area kind of cleaned up, Then I can just go back and stencil it again, and this time it'll look a lot cleaner and crisper. One thing you do want to watch out for if you're using something like a baby wipe to clean up an area is that you want to make sure that it is dry before you go and stencil on top of it, because that moisture there where you were, well, that's just going to make it easier for the paint to run underneath again. And hey, if you're still here watching this video, there's a good chance you're enjoying it. And you might want to see other videos that I create, other ways that I play and I share and I get into colorful messes. If you want to see those, hit that subscribe button. That way you'll know as soon as the next one comes out. So how do I know what to stencil, what word to do next? I didn't memorize this quote. It's written on a piece of paper right off camera. And what it says is, don't worry about failures, worry about the chances you miss when you don't even try. And so far, I've managed to spell everything correctly, but it's when I got to his name, Jack Canfield, that's when I started to have all sorts of problems. I was getting impatient, kind of worn out by the end, and I did a sloppy job on the C, but then I completely forgot the N in his name. I was going to make him Jack Canfield. So I have to really clean that area up. And as I'm blotting up and down, I keep turning to a clean spot on the baby wipe. That way I can get as much of the purple removed. And then I'm back in business. I'm going to put the correct letter on there and I'm going to stencil right over it. Now, after I got his name on here, there wasn't enough to fill the entire board. So guess what I did? I just started repeating the quote all over again. And that way I've got the entire thing filled in. It's all staying with the same quote. And I even got lucky that the two words finished up right in the same spot. Now, as I was doing this, everything didn't go perfectly. There are some little areas that could use a little cleanup. So what I'm going to do is cut a cosmetic sponge until it's really small here. So I've got something very little to work with. And then I'm going to be able to just go and touch up some of the lines where maybe they didn't quite meet up exactly perfectly, because this was not exactly a, how shall we say, precise endeavor. So there are little spots that I just want to touch up here and there. So putting a little bit of paint on the sponge, then I can go around and touch those areas up. And what about the bottom? Do you see that little strip of color showing through on the bottom? My letters didn't perfectly line up with the bottom. No sweat. I'm going to take the ever fancy Post-it note and I'm just going to line it up there as a mask, and then I'm just going to add a little bit of that purple on the very bottom. So one of the things that I hear from people when they're stenciling is sometimes paint will go underneath the stencil. And there are a couple of things you can do to prevent that from happening. And one is to use a light touch and to go in an up and down motion. So if you push really hard on a stencil, you're going to squish that paint right underneath the stencil itself. And another way to help yourself have crisp stenciling is to use a thicker paint. The thicker the paint, the less likely it is to run underneath the stencil. Well, thanks so much for joining me for today's play. If you've been enjoying this video, I'd so appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more play, more fun, check out the blog over at colorfuljourney.com, where I've got, well, lots of stuff there, including a free workshop called Permission to Play. Thanks so much for letting me be a part of your colorful journey.